Oh God, I mean, the bass for me is like your soul. When every note kind of, I love the register of bass, the timbre of bass. So when you play, you feel that going through your body. It's not just listening with your ears, but it's going through your whole body. Um, I've always loved the responsibility that the bass has in terms of being the instrument that goes between the rhythmic side of the music and the melodic side of the music. You get to straddle both fences doing that. And it's just been a joy. I've been playing bass. I mean, I've been playing music since I was 5 years old, but been playing bass since I was 12 years old. And I never tire of it. I love it every day, and every day brings new adventures and new music to do. So I feel very, very blessed and fortunate in what I get to do. I think they're the same. When you're a musician, I mean, your life is music, and it's hard to imagine what this world would be like if we didn't have music in it. It's one of the few things. The thing I've always loved with playing music is I've traveled the world, and I've gone to so many places in the world where people don't speak English, which is my language. Yet the music it connects with everybody. So you can be in places and people have learned the songs phonetically, where they don't really know what the words mean, but they've learned the words and they sing them, or they just go for the feel of it. But there's very few things we can do in life that have that kind of a relationship with everybody. It really is it is the universal language. And also it allows me, when I travel to other countries, I get to hear music in those countries, and it really lets me learn more about that culture and what the people feel and enjoy. And it could be in Argentina, it could be in China, it could be in anywhere in the world. And the music is the thing that always connects with people. So it's a really, to me, it's almost magical the way it works. I
Uh,
feel very, very fortunate to do what I do. My parents had a pretty eclectic record collection. So there was everything from, Sinatra to classical to, I mean, I was a little kid, but as I started to play and learn more about music and my relationship to it, I listened to a lot of different music, everything from, I mean, one of the early artists that I loved when I was learning to play bass was the Righteous Brothers. I would play along with their records. But I listened to a lot. I would play jazz. I listened to Ray Brown and Red Callender. And I would listen to a lot of classical and jazz when I was a kid growing up, more than most of my friends. They were, more into Elvis and stuff. But everything for me changed dramatically when the Beatles came along, and I started to listen to music in a different way. And then really the whole direction of my life changed at that point in terms of embracing the entire English invasion, and then also all the music that was being made in the States. So, but I've always kind of try to listen to everything I possibly can, and let it influence the way I think about music, so that when I'm doing recording sessions and stuff, I have lots of ideas in the back of my head of things I've heard in the past that I might go, oh God, that would be great here. Let me, I'm not afraid to plagiarize, there's so many players that I really love their playing. It's like people ask me, who's your favorite bass player? And I go, it's impossible to say. There's so many wonderful musicians out there. And I think we all trade ideas, even if we don't know it, just by hearing each other. It's the greatest thing in the world. Unless you really suck, and then they hate you, then it could be horrible. Luckily, I haven't really been in that situation. I mean, to me, that's really the most exhilarating part of this whole thing. I know people have asked me in the past if you had to make a choice between touring and recording, which would you want to do? And I always say, no, touring, absolutely. There's hardships that come with it in terms of family and all that because you're gone. But the immediacy of connecting with an audience is so incredible. And especially when, I'd be out with, Phil Collins or, Toto or so many of these bands, James Taylor, uh, you would feel this immediate connection with an audience. They are there for that moment, and as soon as you start and you feel that energy, there's nothing like it in the world. There's nothing else to me in life that can match that feel that you get from an audience. And I've always loved it. I've always felt the most exciting thing is that relationship with people out there. Never. It's one of those things you're learning, and you're just, especially when things just started, becoming a career. You're just happy for every day. You don't really see where things are going, and I still feel like I just got a phone call from an artist I work with saying, can you go out on the road at the end of January into March? And I said, absolutely. And I was excited. I was as excited getting that phone call as I was back in 1970 when James Taylor called me to work with him. So it's one of these things that is just it's kind of like it's like your oxygen in blood. It really is your life force that is wonderful. And I get excited every day when I know I get to go to work and play with great artists, and they don't have to be famous people. I work on a lot of things with people that nobody's ever going to hear or anything like that, but you still go in with the same excitement and passion for them as you would with the biggest artists in the world that you get called for. Because it's their joy in music that you get involved in, and I've worked on things that nobody's ever heard. They never got a record deal or anything like that, but it was really fun to work with them. So I love every day. I really feel so blessed and fortunate. Oh God. Well, there's so many things that come into to play, because it especially like if you're talking to other musicians and you're talking, like if I'm doing a clinic or anything like that, or a master class, when it comes to recording, you end up talking about responsibility when you accept the job to go do it. If the session starts at 10 o'clock in the morning, you're not pulling in the parking lot at 10 o'clock in the morning. You've already been there for a half hour at that point, and you're set up and you've tuned. And if there's charts on the stand or anything, you've looked through things to make sure see if there's anything that might take a little extra attention to go in. And then once the music starts, the things you do is you listen to everybody else. You're a part of a team. It's not all about you and your chops and your abilities or anything like that. It's your relationship with the other musicians and the artist. And you listen, and when a song you finish recording and they're gonna do a playback in the control room, you go in the control room and you listen to the playback and have suggestions and thoughts about something, or express your feelings about it, rather than sitting on your phone, ignoring that. And there's so much that comes into play when you're on stage playing. You connect with each other visually. You look at each other. I see so many bands and they never even look at each other on stage. I don't understand that at all. I mean, we're like constantly making eye contact and ideas kick, and you look down in the audience and you see people and you connect with them, because it's supposed to be, with music, it's fun, it's entertainment and all this. And I see so many bands that like completely ignore their audience, and you just go, I don't get it. So for me, I mean, this is what I'm saying is all personal for me. This is how I work, but everybody's different, so there's no real rules about things. I just know how I work, and it's the thing that works for me. But that doesn't necessarily mean my way is the best way for everybody. So it's the uniqueness of this whole thing. Everything is very subjective. It's like going to an art museum and you stand in front of a painting, and one person could be standing there crying, they're so moved by it, and the next person over is going, this sucks. I don't get it. So, and they're both right. So the music is the same way. Wow. I mean, there's been so many. um, you know, it's almost impossible. In the studio, there's been so many different people I've worked with in the studio that I sit there sometimes in the studio and I'm just kind of, I'm fanboy. I'm so digging the people around me and stuff. On the road, it's always great. One of the most constant things always was when I was touring all the years with Phil Collins. Every time we played In the Air Tonight, and the emotion between the band and the audience on that, while the audience is waiting for that drum fill, and we would just get goosebumps every night. It was really exciting for that. But I mean, to me, anytime I get to pick up a bass and go do something, they're all really great moments. I could easily sit here and list 1,000 great moments, and I wouldn't even be touching the surface of it. I think it would be easier to say the things that weren't good, and there would only be a few of those, but those are the ones you don't even care about or talk about. But it's exciting every time we get to do what we do. So it was a complete accident the way that thing all started, and I describe it in the book. But the book is 6,000 photographs of people just going. And it started on Phil Collins's tour in 2004. I had a bass tech on the tour named Steve Winstead, and there was talk on that tour that when that tour ended, Phil was talking about retiring. And we had a lot. I mean, we probably had 100 people on the road, and I'm thinking, I may never see any of these people again, because it was the tour that brought us together. But they were from all over the country, all over Europe, and so I thought at the end of the tour I was going to take pictures of everybody on the tour and make a little folder in my computer that I could look at years later. And the first person I went to was my bass tech, Steve. And he was sitting at his laptop working. And I said, Steve, give me a smile. And he's sitting there going, he just goes, yeah. And I took a picture, and I was laughing but I kind of dug it. So I went and I got Phil and his manager, everybody in the band, all the crew people, the bus drivers and truck drivers. And I put it away in my computer like I had planned on, but it had a theme going through it this way. And then a couple of years later, I went on the road with Toto, and my first tour with them, and I did the same thing. So I got Lukather and everybody in the band to give me the finger. But it's not angry. It's nothing like that. And it got up to about 250 pictures at that point. It took on a life of its own at that point. Everywhere I went, I was getting people in the studio, on airplanes. I could get everybody on the airplane to do it. I did it at concerts and got the whole audience to do it. And I mean, the book has 6,000 pictures in it. I still have 7,000 I didn't even use in the book. So I don't know if I do a volume 2 of it.
Yes,
it might be a virtual book rather than an actual hard copy. But it's a big, heavy coffee table book, and we really did as much quality on it. But the thing for me is, this is not what it's about. It's this.
Yes.
And the real pleasure in it for me is just seeing people's faces when they're given the opportunity. And it's got everybody from James Taylor to Charlie Watts to Jeff Beck to Randy Newman, but it's also got kind of the average person on the street too. So it's, to me, about humanity. And so, I ended up with a friend of mine. We did everything ourselves on it, self-publishing and all that. So I sell the book through a website that I created, and on that website I've got the book, but I've also got T-shirts that I've done that have my beard on the T-shirts, and then I've got all my, because I was an art major in college, and so I've got drawings and paintings available too on there, prints of all that. But the book is a lot of fun. Everybody I know that's gotten it, just they say, "Oh, this is so much fun. We've got it on our coffee table," and people come over and start going through it, and they're laughing and having fun. So it's really about just having a good time. And it's, so like you said, it's called Everybody Loves Me. And if anybody's interested, the website for that is lelandsklar'sbeard.com. Somebody owns my name, so I couldn't use just my name. So I added an S to my last name and made it Beard after that. So it's lelandsklar'sbeard.com. But it's fun. I ship them all over the world. I've got one sitting here right now. It's going, another one going to Australia. I've sent some to Brazil and Argentina and Mexico and all over the place. It's just but it only, I think, happened because of COVID. Because like everybody else, I had a very full schedule, and when COVID struck, it all disappeared. Everything went away, and I was sitting around trying to think, what am I going to do now? And that's when I started the YouTube channel, and did the book, and I started recording from home, and just trying to find a way to feel engaged and active every day, rather than sitting around going, now what? It actually turned out to be an incredibly busy time, a terrible time, and it's still going on. This is the sad thing, is so many people have been so desperate for COVID to be over that they're acting like it's over, but it's not. I mean, our numbers here in Los Angeles are going back up again. It's really scary. But the horror of it, I had friends die and they were very sick from it. But there were two sides to it, so, but it also gave you time to reflect and think about your life and what's important, and figure out other avenues of things to do. So I tried to make it as positive a period as I could. And it was the same with, there's a documentary movie that's been made about our band, and by Denny Tedesco, who did the Wrecking Crew movie, which is a great film about the musicians of the 60s in Los Angeles. And we started it before COVID. And then when COVID hit, it changed the whole way of filming and everything. So it's been a pretty dramatic change in everybody's lives during this period. And you tried to make the best of it during it. Yeah, I mean, the thing that to me is really wonderful about the instrument is almost everybody that picks it up has something to offer. So I mean, I can sit here and I can watch Victor Wooten and Flea and so many bass players, and each of them has their own unique voice on the instrument, and I really just appreciate all of them. There's a great bass player in Australia named Rebecca Johnson. She has a group, and I just love watching her videos. And we've become friends through emails and YouTube. And but to me, almost everybody that plays, because I was a huge fan of Jack Bruce and John Entwistle and McCartney, and there were so many great bass players that came out of all these decades. And I just think that, I've always been happy to be a part of the bass community. because it really is. Every time I hear a different record, I listen back to Duck Dunn, and I listen to Jamerson, and I listen to Bob Babbitt, and Carol Kay, and each of these people have contributed so much to music, and I really just appreciate all of it. But each person brings their own voice. In Los Angeles, there's so many great bass players. Here in LA, and so I'm really just happy to be one of them,
Right.
and I appreciate all of them. Well, the thing is, when you're in the studio with other musicians, that's really the best time when you're making an album as compared to people sending you a file at home and it's just you sitting there doing it. The interaction of players in the studio is really the most exciting part of the whole thing because ideas come flowing between everybody. Uh, you might have because every time it's different. Sometimes there's no music. Sometimes there's everything's written out exactly what they want. Other times it's just a chord sheet, or like if I work in Nashville, it's just a number sheet. Um, the process can be different every time, um, but it's that interaction of players, and the thing that's been wonderful about it is it's allowed me, rather than being a musician who was in one band and had just played with those guys, it allows me to, play with different players all the time. And it's really, that to me has been like the greatest part of, like I said, about being in the community of players. Uh, where this week I got to work with the great Jim Keltner as a drummer. Next week I get to work with Herman Matthews, who I love playing with. And after that, we have some work with our band where I'm working with Russ Kunkel on drums. And then I have a project after that where a drummer I love playing with in town, I don't get to play with that often, named Victor Indrizzo, is going to be playing. So there's that excitement about all these different relationships. And each time you work with different musicians, it makes you play a little bit differently. So it keeps, you don't get stuck in one thing. You have to like respond in different ways all the time. And that's the most fun of the whole thing. But it's really being in a studio with other players is to me the optimum way to make a record. I mean, I've never really even thought about. I think the only thing that, as far as a legacy would be, is if people long after I'm gone are still listening to music I played on and enjoying it. That's plenty of legacy right there. They don't even have to necessarily know who I was or anything, but if they're enjoying, if they're, still listening to James Taylor and Phil Collins and Jackson Browne and Linda Ronstadt and all these different Barbara Streisand and all these things I've worked on over the years, if decades from now, if they're still listening to it, that's great. The interesting thing where we're kind of, looking at each other in our band was with this movie that's been made about us. It's kind of like frosting on a cake. It's now another level of legacy because there's actually the story of us and a visual side of it. So there's another element of legacy there that people could enjoy. Because I watched the Wrecking Crew movie still, and so many of the people in that movie are no longer with us. They've all passed away, but they feel so alive when you see the movie and you listen to the music that they played. So that's plenty for me. That'd be enough. Well, I mean, every day is different. Today, I did an interview this morning, and then we're doing this, and I'll do my YouTube after this. Tomorrow, I have a Clubhouse on my YouTube channel. So tomorrow is a day I do one-on-one, either FaceTime or Skype with people all day long. Each one's an individual, and I've gotten to know these people there. And then next week, back in the studio to do an album. So every day is different. I mean, that's one of the nicest things is there's no set routine. Each day is great, and it's a beautiful day outside. So later on, after I finish the things I got to do now, I'm probably going to go out and do yard work. Work in my yard. I find that very therapeutic. and it brings me relaxation most of the time. Sometimes it makes me crazy, but it's for the most part, it's really it being part of nature is always nice. Just get away from all the craziness elsewhere and just go in the yard and weed the the plants and dig things, and so I love it. It's good therapy. That's the I mean, I go through the same thing here. Where I'll go to the grocery store and they've got music playing, and I'm sitting here listening to something, going, "Oh, that sounds familiar," and then I suddenly realize it was something I played on. And the thing that's nice is it's like I said in the beginning, that music really is such a universal language that everybody can enjoy. So it's really fun. Like when I'll be working in Japan, walk by a club and and they've got like a stuff playing, and you kind of listen for a second and go, God, they're playing our stuff, and it's really neat. It's really a lot of fun. That's really hard to say, because again, that becomes very subjective. I mean, certainly to me, a great song is if it's telling a meaningful story if the lyric touches you in a meaningful way and isn't just some trite um, sort of just filling space. When they're really great, sometimes you're in the studio. But see, this is the hard part. Sometimes you're sitting in the studio and you play a song, and we all kind of look at each other and go, this is incredible. This is so good. And nothing happens with it. It doesn't even get released. And other times you're working on something going, what a piece of crap. This is hard. And it becomes a huge hit. So, you don't know until the public gets hold of it if it's going to be considered a great song. And many times the really great songs just didn't have the right promotion. They didn't have, like, maybe we recorded them for somebody who then got dropped from the label. So there was no team doing it, where other people haven't done a great song, but there's such a strong, energy through the record company or something that they can almost force people to make it a hit. But I really listen for a song that really has substance. It doesn't have to be complicated. I mean, you could work on a song that only has two chords, but if it's really telling you a story that's meaningful, it's a great song. Um, and then if you've got a great band that really listens to what that song is trying to do and figures out their parts for it, and they all come together, and it's just becomes this package that really works. But it's really, again, subjective. There's no rules. I mean, if there was, everybody'd be hugely successful in the business, because they would know what's needed and what's wanted. But you just don't know. So you give your very best to everything you do, and if it becomes successful, that's wonderful. But you don't know that that's going to happen when you're doing it.